Welcome back to Brew On It. It is hot, and this is my drink of choice. If you like pina coladas, this is the way to go. So good and refreshing and healthy. All right, I read 12 books in the month of May, so let's get through them here. Okay, I always start off the month with the best of intentions. I planned to sit down and film after every book that I read, and of course that didn't happen. So for the month of, what month are we in? This is my May reading wrap up, and we're going to jump in kind of a little bit out of order because I had started one series and then had to wait to finish it because they didn't have the audiobook. And I had to wait for a physical copy from my library, so I'm going to read these a little bit out of order. So this first one is called Unlikely Story by Ali Rose. This was one of the first read options for Prime members, and I downloaded this a couple months ago and gave it a go. So I gave this one 4 stars. It is a romance. It is about Nora, a therapist who writes an anonymous column as a side job, and she falls for the wrong man. Nora has a new annoying neighbor and has to go talk to her counselor about him. And it is very wise for a counselor to have a counselor. This was an aptly named story, unlikely story, yes it is, enemies to lovers trope. Some of the lessons that stood out to me was the fact that first impressions can just be plain false about people, and how we project our stuff and what we think people are thinking on other people, and that presumptions get us into trouble a lot of the time. A quote, "We often talk without thinking, but real listening takes work." I am working on my listening. I tend to listen to respond or listen to defend instead of listening and asking more clarifying questions. I make assumptions, so working on the listening. Another quote, "Sometimes it is easier to view someone through the single dimension you want to keep them tethered to." I love complex characters. I love gray because it's just a lot closer to real life. People grow, people change, hopefully we mature, and we have to allow them to do that. So we have to offer grace. Great lessons in that book. The other book I read is called The Things We Do for Love. This is another Kristin Hanna novel. I love this author. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It had a lot of heavy topics. This story has a dual perspective. We follow Lauren, a high schooler who is hardworking, gets good grades, but is in a rough position with a mother who is an addict. And then we follow Angela, who is recently divorced. They divorced over losing a child. So again, this has some heavier topics. And she is starting over. She has a big Italian family. They call her the princess of the family. And they recently all lost the father. And they have a family restaurant that she comes back to try to kind of revive and save. So the topics of this book hit on obsession and grief and depression, loss, adoption, and childhood trauma. I enjoyed this book, but it was definitely a hard one to read. Book number 3 that I read was called The Prison Healer. I gave it 5 stars, and this satisfied the May reading challenge word was for favorite. This is my new favorite series. I devoured it. It's a young adult fantasy. It's about a girl named Kiva who is 17, and she is in a prison camp. She has been in prison for 10 years. Her father was thrown in prison, and she accompanied him to prison. And she is in training to be a healer. There were parts of the book that were a little repetitive, but I think it's understandable because of how desperate she was, the desperate situation that she was in. It was kind of like her mantra. So her mantra got a little repetitive, but it was there. There is a rebel faction in this book. There is also found family. She has a young boy that she is taking care of in prison, which you kind of go, huh? but that's kind of explained. Book 2 of this series is called The Gilded Cage, and it's the continued story of Kiva after leaving the prison. And you'll have to read book number 1 to figure out how she leaves prison. We learn about her siblings. The lesson of this story is learning to be wise with who you share information with. So her story progresses, and we learn that she has some type of magic. So book 1 I listened to, and then they didn't have book 2 for some reason. So on audiobook, so I had to get the physical copy, and I read through that. And then book number 3 was also an audiobook called The Blood Traitor, and that is number 3 of the Prison Healer series. Again, we have themes of found family, a lot of twists and turns in book 3, some good hard conversations in book 3. We have faulty first impressions, forgiveness, love, fear, and what fuels your magic. What fuels your life, fear or love? So we have some hard topics that come up in books 2 and 3. There is some not overly descriptive, thankfully, but there is mentions of gang rape and drug usage. So even though I would say this is a young adult series, maybe other people would say it's more of a new adult. So there are some more mature themes. But again, nothing is very overly descriptive. So I really enjoyed this new series. The next book that I read was The Lost Husband by Katherine Center. I went on a whole Katherine Center binge. I love her books. So I came back around to this one. This one I gave 4 stars. The story is about Libby with her 2 kids. After losing her husband, she ends up moving in with her hypercritical mother and gets a letter from her crazy Aunt Jean saying, come out and help me with my farm. So the story follows Libby as she flees her hypercritical mother and goes to visit her crazy aunt on a goat farm, and she learns all kinds of different new skills. This was actually done on Netflix. I don't remember the actors' names, but it was a cute story. I thought the book was better, of course, it always is. But I saw this Netflix special. It was like a movie adaptation years ago, and I had kind of forgotten some of the details, so it was very pleasant to read it. The themes in this book are love, loss, and starting over, and of course, forgiveness. There's some great quotes. The first one is, you can't just wish strength for yourself, or wisdom, or resilience. Those things have to be earned. Another one, you're more likely to see a thing, Jean said, if you look for it. So it's that brain bias thing. The third quote is, the very worst thing I could possibly imagine had happened to me, but I was still okay. All right, the next book I read was the third in the Powerless trilogy, Fearless. This is a fantasy, and I actually physically read this book, and it just didn't live up to my hopes, I will say. Lauren Roberts did a great job starting out the trilogy, but I think sometimes people just push for something, and the book could have ended about 10 times. And I just felt like the plot wasn't really fleshed out. There was some very annoying and repetitive endearments going on, poetical nonsense. And don't get me wrong, I'm a romantic, I like it, but this was a bit much. I felt like the trials in the book were kind of pointless, predictable twist. Wow, I'm really not selling this book. There was just countless opportunities for her to end the book, and it kept going on, and it just dragged out. I will say that it was tasteful, no smut that I recall, so it was tastefully done, not smutty. Wasn't my favorite. I liked Powerless the best so far. Number 1. It's always number 1. The next book I read is called The Mobster's Daughter. This is a Christian fiction. There are some verses in it, so if you don't like Christian content, this one might not be for you. The author is Rachel Scott McDaniel. This is a woman who is threatened by the mob in Pittsburgh. She comes over to Pittsburgh, and she bumps into a detective named Rhett, who is seeking justice for his father's death. And The woman is kind of hiding her identity, and you find out why as you read on, but she works in a radio show, and her name is Katherine. So she is from Italy, and she comes over to Pittsburgh to see her father and has trouble finding him. And the themes in this book are revenge, forgiveness, and how we view God. Do we view him as harsh or merciful? So walk by faith, not by sight is obviously a recurring theme in here. And they talk about how difficult things from your past can lend us strength toward our future. There is the theme of confession. Confession brings both freedom and consequences. The next one in the Timeless series came out. This is number 5. This is the Timeless series by Gabrielle Meyer. Every Hour Until Then. Again, this is kind of the reoccurring theme in the Timeless thing, is that you have a dual timeline, and on your whatever birthday, you have to make the decision which timeline you want to stay in. So we have her in Washington, D.C. in 1938, but then she travels abroad to London to be a guest curator and make an exhibit for Jack the Ripper. Whereas in her other timeline in 1888, she is trying to save somebody she cares about from Jack the Ripper. So it's how do you not change time and forfeit your life? So she has a childhood friend that helps be a sleuth with her, because obviously a woman going around at that time playing detective wouldn't have gone over very well. So she is trying to decide which timeline she stays in and how she can save the person that she loves. So it's a little bit of a conundrum. The other book I read, I found in a free little library. I found a Colleen Hoover book called Reminders of Him. This one was very emotional, a lot of grief and loss, but I gave it 5 stars. Not always a huge Colleen Hoover fan. They're rough sometimes. So a great quote from this book: "It proves that time, distance, and devastation allow people enough opportunity to craft villains out of people they don't even know." I thought that was very spot on. So we follow Kenna, who is getting out of prison, and her desire is to reconnect with her daughter that she had while she was in prison. You find out that she's in prison for killing her boyfriend, and their baby is born in prison and then given to the boyfriend's parents to raise. And now she's getting out 5 years later and wants to reunite with her daughter. And there's just a lot of turmoil because of obviously her having killed the father. There's a lot of hurt. They only had one child, and now they have this grandchild, and it's very threatening to have Kenna show up wanting to be in her daughter's life. The best friend of her dead boyfriend befriends her, and it's a cluster. It's a cluster, an emotional cluster. And I really enjoyed reading it because it had themes of grief and loss and forgiveness, abandonment. And it's talking about, guilt and shame, grief. And there's just a great reminder of the power of perspective. It's not easy to walk into somebody else's shoes and to say what you would or wouldn't do. It's just too difficult. So anyway, great story, hard story. So if you're looking for an emotional one, that one might be for you. This is another one that I found in a free little library. It's called The Finders Keepers Library. That was very appropriate. By Annie Raines. I gave this one a 3.5 stars. It was a romance, physical book. Had a little harder time getting into it. We follow Savannah, who is a gardener, and she is on TikTok with her little green thumb things, and she's just recently got a diagnosis of lupus and is kind of going through a lot of transition. She goes to stay with her childhood beloved aunt, who she stayed with every summer, and she is wrestling with being a burden to those that she loves. And ironically, her beloved aunt, who's elderly and had a fall last year, also struggles with allowing other people to help her. So they have some similarities there. Her childhood sweetheart has a daughter and lives nearby, so there's some love interest there. And There's a storm which damages her aunt's rose garden, and it's kind of like a community effort to get it back up and ready for a coming wedding. There's a lot of sweet small town life. There's a farmer's market and people are making things, and just everybody knows everybody. It's just kind of a sweet story. The last book I read is called The Giver by Lois Lowry. It kind of surprised me. This is one that I heard of years ago, and it has like the little medallion thing on the front. Forgive me, I'm not recalling what award it won, but it's been around. This is a dystopian book, and I didn't really know that going into that. I just started reading it because I figured, oh, this has that medal. This one has an award. It's probably great. Let's read it. So we follow Jonas, who is born in a kind of dystopian, closed-off village in the future. And we are learning how they've kept everybody alive, basically, through very rigid roles and rules. And you see him receive kind of memories from the past. There's some just interesting concepts in the book, because in this dystopian future, they've kind of done away with emotions, and everybody's on like medication to suppress lust and emotions, I think. So it's odd. But I only gave this 3 stars. I wasn't like, it was intriguing, but it kind of didn't go anywhere for me. So the memories of the past are joys and losses are painful. So to get rid of pain, they've kind of just gotten rid of emotion altogether. And I don't know, I just found, obviously, it a little bland, because, you know, that's part of the beauty of life is color and depth and compassion and loss. And without the highs and lows of life would be very colorless. So, and that's what you see in this book. So January's bookshelf challenge word was beauty. February's was size. March was time. April's was flowers. May was favorite, and that was my new. May's bookshelf challenge word was favorite, and I chose The Prison Healer is my new favorite series, and you should check it out by Lynette, Noni. And then June is birds. Today is June 2nd, and I already started a book called Life, Loss, and Puffins, and this is by Katherine Ryan Hyde, and that will satisfy the bird bookshelf challenge word for June. May, June, and July are summer months, so I am in full reading mode, and I hope you'll share with me below what you're reading. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because it is yellow fly season down here, and they like to bite. So I'm going to go inside. Ouch.